All right, so welcome everyone. I can see you all pouring in to the session. We're very excited to be hosting this conversation, if not now, when? An honest conversation about Black inclusion in business. I'm the founder and CEO of Audelis and Involve. My name is Suki Sandhu, and I'm incredibly honored to be joined by three of the most influential Chief Diversity Officers I know out there, and honored and privileged that they're joining us today to talk about this important topic. The fact that so many of you have registered and joining shows that you're keen to understand more about this subject, as do I. I'm learning every day. And the way we want to have this conversation is they're going to introduce themselves. We're going to play a short film. And then I have a number of topic areas that I'll be covering with the panelists. But obviously, please do send your comments in the chat room. One of my team is fielding them, and we want to make it as interactive as possible so we can get some of your comments and thoughts and questions to the panelists. But please do, thank you for joining us, and we hope that you're really going to enjoy the conversation. So let's launch into the introductions. Erica, do you want to start by introducing yourself?
Sure, I'll try to make this as quick as possible. First of all, thank you so much for including me in this really important conversation. And it's such a privilege to be on the panel with both Sandra and Wayma, so thank you for this. My name's Erica Irish Brown. I'm the Chief Diversity Officer at Goldman Sachs. I've been in my role now for 2 years. And prior to that, I was Chief Diversity Officer at Bloomberg and spent several years doing diversity recruiting functions at Bank of America, as well as Lehman Brothers. This is my second career. My first career was as an investment banker on the line at firms including Lehman Brothers and Morgan Stanley, for about 15 years. So really a privilege to have this conversation. I do feel like this moment is a very different time than past moments that we've felt. And I hope that we're able to capture this moment, turn it into a movement, and make some real change. Thank you.
Sandra.
Hi, I'm Sandra Sims Williams. I'm the SVP for Diversity and Inclusion at Nielsen. Well, I've been there 5.5 months. So this is new ground in terms of an organization, but I've been in D&I for probably about 20 years at this point. And the bulk of my career actually has been in advertising and communications. I believe in a high touch strategy when we talk about D&I, and it's really about how we experience each other. And I've been doing that with differential learning. Everybody's not starting at the same starting point.
Yeah.
And we have to account for the different kinds of approaches we have with people because we are losing people before they get started. So we want to make sure that we help each other learn. And in this moment in time, it really is about us helping each other learn. So
Absolutely.
I look forward to the conversation with my colleagues, Erica and Wayma. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandra. Wayma.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Suki, for again bringing us all together to really talk about not only the topic, but really allowing us to be able to speak from a practitioner perspective, but also as African and Black women as well, which I think is important. My name is Wayma Hoover. I am the Chief Diversity Officer for Sanofi. I am based in Paris, France, but I am American. I've lived here for 4 years, and prior to that, have my majority of my background has been in pharma. I worked at Pfizer, Bristol Myers Squibb. Started out in consulting as in organizational development, and kind of transitioned into diversity space. And really, the work that we're leading and why this is so important is because it's really around driving an inclusive work environment. Really, not even thinking about what and who finds what definition of diversity, but what are the systematic approaches that we're taking to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to develop, to thrive, and to have their full potential realized. And I think that this dialogue today is going to help us address that and address the things that we need to do and take action to really address those barriers and obstacles, not only within the corporate environment, but also in the communities where we live.
Absolutely. I think that's the key thing today, Wayma, as you mentioned, is we want this session to be something where you can learn, but ultimately actions that you can take back to your organizations, but also in society. So we hope that you're going to have lots of things to do after today. What we want to start with today, there is a great film that Sandra made me aware of on Friday called The Choice, and it was published by Procter & Gamble 5 days ago. I'm going to play this film to start because I feel it's quite a good place to frame the conversation and then for us to launch into some of the topics. So just bear with me 1 second because this is the first time I'm doing this, and I'm sure I'm hopefully going to get it right first time. Bear with me. Can you see this, everyone?
With inverted tongue, from whence does fulfillment come? And I expel from this mortal shell, we're at death a living love. Someone I can't see, cry to me, and I do.
Wow, gets me every time I see that, and I've seen it about 10 times now. Sorry, just turning that off on the other screen. I think I want to start by asking you, how has the last few weeks been for you, be it personally or professionally? We're really keen to understand how it's felt for you. Waima, would you like to go first?
Yeah, certainly. I think not being in, are you able to hear me? Is that okay? Is that my speaker? Is that okay?
I think so.
I think coming and being outside of the United States and seeing it from afar, but feeling it just the same, has really showed me that, you know, the condition that we're seeing in the US, but being felt everywhere, is not allowing anyone to feel protected because they're not on the lands, the United States lands. And this is why we're seeing a lot of protests, we're seeing a lot of conversation, rallying across the world. I mean, just this past weekend in Germany, there was a huge 20,000 people within Berlin,
Yeah.
in Hamburg we had others, in Paris the last 2 weeks there have been rallies. And I think it just shows that we don't no longer have the ability to say, that's not my problem because it doesn't happen here. Because what it has done is solve that, she really demonstrated that feeling marginalized and actually being, I think, in the pandemic and seeing this global health pandemic and seeing how countries have responded with advocacy organizations, learning and adopting practices from other countries, and experiencing what happened in a very short period of time with Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, it made everybody question, so what are we doing about the social ills that is happening on the transgressions against Black people? And that question has come to bear if we saw just the wonderful, great ways and practices that were used by countries in adopting these practices and policies to really intervene on this healthcare epidemic. Why are we not doing the same for the egregious transgressions against Black people that not only are in the United States, but we now are hearing and seeing all over the world? And I think that it's being felt because that question is a question of humanity. The coronavirus and the pandemic was humane, and everyone said that we have to deal. So what are we doing to deal with the social pandemic that we see that is a part of humanity. And really being here has really brought that to a head, because experiencing what's happening in Paris, seeing what's happening in Germany and around the world, it shows me that we are much closer, and these things really affect us afar and beyond, no matter if it's in our state or the next around.
It's like you say, it's almost like the second pandemic of racism that we're dealing with, not just the coronavirus.
The social pandemic, absolutely, the ills of one. Absolutely.
Yeah. Erica, how's it been for you this last few weeks?
So these last few weeks have been exhausting, and I'm exhausted, and both my personal life and professional life have come crashing together. And when I think about personally, I'm the mother of 3 Black young men. And, you know, when you see the visuals of Ahmaud Arbery or George Floyd, it's very difficult not to project and in your head say that could be my son, you know, or even that could be my husband, or, you know, so I think just very personally, it's taken its emotional toll, and has also prompted us as a family to go out and protest peacefully for what is right and what needs to change, and to be sure that my sons know that, and frankly, it's been a mission of mine, unfortunately, to have the talks that Black parents have to have with their sons. And actually, you shared the P&G video, The Choice, for anybody on this video that has not seen the talk and the look. You should also go to the same website and look at those commercials as well, because it's very real and very well done. So, you know, that's on the personal side, just processing and making sure I'm doing what's right for my family, and for my kids to understand that they are not immune to this, and we have to stand up for this, and we have to come together as a family. And obviously, we've been going through coronavirus together, and actually we live in a community that's been highly affected by that. So even making the choice to go out to protest was a difficult one, because we have been sheltering in place, which just shows how important it is to get out and take action against institutional racism. On the professional side, obviously it is our roles to lead our companies through these circumstances. Now, we have a lot of senior leaders at Goldman Sachs that are very involved in diversity and inclusion, from our CEO to our global and regional diversity committees, but certainly trying to play a leadership role and provide the insight has been an important part of my role. I did think it was really important that our CEO make a statement, which I was really proud of what his views were and what he wanted to say, and calling it for what it was, racism and discrimination, and for being clear about the names of the victims, you know, and taking a stand. So I think our people at Goldman Sachs felt really good about that, although obviously this is not a situation to feel good about. And I think that what's more important is that it's not just about statements or one and done, but that it continues, like I was saying, taking a moment and turning it into a movement. And the last say, just in terms of this collision of personal and professional for so many Black executives and professionals, is that what I have seen at Goldman Sachs and what environment we've tried to create is one where people are now telling stories that were not previously shared, and deepening the understanding and willing to make themselves vulnerable and be clear, like, yes, this happens to me as a managing director at Goldman Sachs, as a partner at Goldman Sachs. I do have to tell my kid this. I did get stopped by the police. I did have a gun put to my head. Our leaders are really putting their stories out there to enhance that understanding. And also, you know, it's a little therapeutic too. So I've shared stories about, you know, my son's first situation with both an Amy Cooper and the police in 8th grade in a little private school in Teaneck, New Jersey, you know, Tenafly, New Jersey. So I think that we're at an inflection point. And I think people are willing to be vulnerable, willing to speak out, use words they've never used in the corporate atmosphere. And I hope that that's a real catalyst for change.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can hear the emotion in your voice Erica, like particularly when you're talking about your boys. And I just want to say that I feel for you. I'm not going to understand what you're going through. I'm not Black myself, but you can feel the pain, and even through this virtual setting. So I'm really sorry your family's going through that, as other Black families around the world. Sandra, would you like to share how it's been for you in the last few weeks, be it professionally or personally?
Well, both Wema and Erica have certainly expressed what we have been going through. I will say, and I said this to you all before we start, I said I can't go to that personal part, but I feel compelled to do so because sharing what we go through is making it real for other people now.
Yeah.
And I take it as far as my white friends. There are some that I've had for many, many, many years, but we have never really had the conversation about race. And they've never really understood what I go through on a daily basis, being a Black woman, but also being a mother to a Black son, and having to get up every day worried about him, worried about my husband going. My husband gets up early to go take a walk. And I get concerned that he's out there by himself and something could happen. I tell him to take his ID. Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. But these are ordinary things. This is kind of get up and say hello. And this is my ordinary life. And it's not ordinary, it's extraordinary, where we are bearing the burden of someone else's hate. And that we bear the burden of having to do this and carry it around all the time. It's not just a moment, it's all the time. It's 24/7. And so when you, my fellow speakers talk about how we are talking about it now, my white friends, I've said, you don't know certain things that have happened in my family and with my friends. I said, this is real. So they ask, what can they do? Well, here's what I say. I'm asking you to now be consciously caring for me if I am your friend. That's what I'm asking for, to be conscious that my day is not like your day. My life is not like your life. And I don't want you to feel sorry for me. I want you to understand what I go through. And as I do my job, I have to be myself. And I will say the last 10 years, I've kind of like said, you know what, to heck with it. I am who I am. And so I like to bring that to the table. But I do bring it being sensitive because I do know that people go through different things and that we should allow people to be their full selves. But it has not been always good for Black people to come in as their full selves because it is indemnifying to us. We don't get what we deserve because then we're the angry person.
Yeah.
I can even tell you, I mean, my tone, I have to always understand my tone because of how I'm labeled. But I try my best to be engaging because I care about humanity, all humanity. And so to do this job, by the way, you do have to care about all of humanity.
Yeah.
And I think that if we are more open to the conversations, we will get further along. I do believe this time actually is different.
Yeah.
Because it has never been that I have had my white friends call me, text me, see how I'm doing. I have never had that happen. There have been a lot of Black bodies out there. This is the first time. So I say to everyone, if this is the time to pivot, this is the time to pivot.
But Sandra, I mean, you mentioned earlier, just before this was all starting, just about even just the most recent deaths in the US. You would think that perhaps police brutality would be softening and it wouldn't be as severe, but it's happening even now in the thick of this crisis that we're in, dealing with racism and police brutality. I kind of want to jump because I'm conscious it's already nearly 5:30 or 12:30 wherever you are, and there are some key topics I really want to cover. How do we respond to white people who have a different perspective? And I'm talking about the ones that might say all lives matter, because it's something that I think a lot of people have to deal with. Who'd like to go first on that one?
Well, it is about all lives matter, but it is not the ones that are laying in the streets. It is the ones that are it is the ones that are laying in the street that are disproportionately being killed. And so a friend of mine said, if there was a house burning in a neighborhood and we call the fire department, they're not going to hose down the other houses. They're going to hose down the house that's on fire.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
are on fire. And this is the community that needs to be paid attention to. Yes, it is. All lives matter, but Black lives matter. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I don't think saying Black Lives Matter means they matter more than other lives, right? It's not Black Lives Matter more. You know, I think it's the unfortunate point that has to be made, right? Which you only make a sort of a counterpoint if for some reason it's been made to feel like Black lives do not matter, right? Which certainly we have seen that lack of regard for the Black life in so many forms, certainly through, what we most recently have seen with George Floyd. And that's from law enforcement, people who are supposed to serve and protect, with people watching, other law enforcement officers watching. Same thing with Eric Gardner, same words, I cannot breathe, I can't breathe.
Yeah.
And, and still no regard for that individual's rights or life. And I mean, I just named 2 names. We know it's a long list. And we know that this country has a history of disregard for the Black life. Yeah. And, I think that it should not be viewed as offensive to stand up and make that statement. And it doesn't preclude any other life from mattering, but it certainly makes the point that there's a lot of people out there that think the exact opposite.
I think we're really lucky that people have smartphones, that you can capture some of this film. Can you imagine what isn't being captured?
And Suki, to that point, I think it's also, we have to say it, and we have to be deliberate in saying Black Lives Matters, because it's about the value. We're talking about the value of life and putting on something. And again, I can't help but show and talk about the parallels with the healthcare pandemic. When there is something that all people suffer and all people are dealing with, there's a rallying, there's a crying, because they are seeing that there is value and of life, of all life, and that everyone needs to have interventions. And this is why when we see that there is consistent devaluing, because there's not interventions, there's not systemic and institutional processes and policies being made to address them. And these are people in the community that are saying, we're not standing and taking this anymore. And then showing this and actually influencing the solidarity of countries outside of the US. I think that that's such a powerful time we're in, seeing the influx of that, unfortunately with George Floyd's murder. But what it has done is saying, wow, this complete pandemic, right, of the transgressions and the murder of Black people and Black men in particular, we're seeing it resonate and having the call to questions around the world. And this is why it's important for us not to shy away from this, or not to feel guilty that we're making people feel uncomfortable, because this is when you're asking the victim to make the oppressor feel uncomfortable. It's really around being able to have that dialogue and facilitate the exchange. You understand what is really in play, and then how can we take actions to really address it. I think you have to be fearless, and you have to have a level of emotional intelligence and maturity to be able to exchange and know that it's not a zero-sum game. Because I'm saying Black Lives Matter does not mean that I'm saying I'm devaluing your life any less.